it makes you re-watch every ounce of that interview, knowing that he lied about that. And then that email says, "We'll play some more soon." What does that even mean? I mean, it sends shivers down my spine.
A single leaked email has sent shockwaves through the palace, exposing secrets, reopening old wounds, and allegedly pushing Sarah Ferguson to her breaking point. The message, linked to Prince Andrew's past scandals, has stirred tension that no royal statement can silence. Whispers of betrayal, hidden connections, and legal retaliation now swirl behind the palace gates. So, could this be the moment Sarah finally turns against the man she once defended? Grab a seat as we uncover the email that shattered royal silence. The email that started it all. It began with a single email, one message that seemed buried under years of royal secrecy, suddenly finding its way back into the headlines. Reportedly dated 2011, the correspondence allegedly showed Prince Andrew reaching out to a Metropolitan Police officer asking for personal details about Virginia Giuffre, then the young woman at the center of the Epstein scandal. Her name had just surfaced publicly, and the now infamous photo of Andrew with his arm around her had shaken the monarchy to its core. But what this email implied was far more troubling, that a senior royal may have attempted to use official contacts to dig up sensitive information about his accuser. When the message resurfaced this year, it didn't just reopen old wounds, it tore through the fragile peace that had settled between Andrew and his ex-wife, Sarah Ferguson. For years, the two had maintained an unconventional friendship, sharing a home at the Royal Lodge and presenting a united front despite the chaos surrounding them. But sources close to the Duchess claim that this leak changed everything. The tone, the content, and the timing of the email allegedly painted a side of Andrew that even Sarah had struggled to defend. According to reports, the email wasn't just a casual inquiry. It contained details as specific as Giuffre's date of birth and U.S. Social Security number, suggesting a deliberate effort to find something that could discredit her. The revelation sparked immediate interest from the Metropolitan Police, who publicly confirmed they were actively reviewing the claims. Though Prince Andrew has repeatedly denied any wrongdoing, the optics were disastrous. It wasn't merely a scandal. It was a potential abuse of privilege, one that reignited public outrage and political calls for accountability. Behind palace walls, the leak reportedly sent shockwaves. Sarah Ferguson, who had once defended Andrew during the height of the Epstein crisis, was said to be furious and deeply shaken. Her name and her daughters, Beatrice and Eugenie, were mentioned in older correspondence involving Epstein, and the idea that Andrew's actions could once again drag them into controversy left her livid. For Sarah, it wasn't just about reputation anymore. It was personal. Insiders suggest that her reaction was immediate and emotional. If Andrew thought the storm had passed, this email proved otherwise. The ghosts of 2011 were back, and this time Sarah wasn't standing quietly by his side. But as the story gathered momentum, one question cut through every royal hallway and newsroom. What would Sarah do next? Keep watching to find out. Sarah's legal strike. When the leaked email hit the press, it wasn't just Prince Andrew's name that dominated headlines. It was Sarah Ferguson's silence. For a woman who had stood by her ex-husband through years of scandal, her sudden withdrawal spoke volumes. Insiders claimed the Duchess of York had reached her breaking point and was allegedly consulting legal experts about an extraordinary move, dragging Prince Andrew to the Supreme Court. To outsiders, the rumor seemed sensational, but within royal circles, it made unsettling sense. Sarah had spent decades rebuilding her public image after her marriage's collapse and years of tabloid ridicule. Her business ventures often struggled under whispers of financial dependency on Andrew's royal ties. But this latest email, hinting at his involvement in ethically questionable behavior, was said to have crossed a line. What reportedly enraged Sarah was the implication that her name and possibly their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, had been drawn into the fallout. The correspondence didn't just reveal Andrew's alleged effort to dig up information on Virginia Giuffre. It hinted at past connections, that threatened to stain the entire family. One report even suggested Sarah and the girls had visited Epstein after his release, something she has vehemently denied. Still, the damage was done and the doubts were impossible to ignore. Behind closed doors, Sarah was said to be furious. Friends claimed she felt used, that her loyalty and willingness to defend Andrew had only endangered her own reputation. The leaked email, to her, wasn't just humiliating. It was a professional and personal liability. Her work as an author, public speaker, and charity advocate could all suffer from being tied too closely to a disgraced royal. Legal advisors reportedly outlined options, from protecting her image to pursuing a formal claim if Andrew's conduct had caused reputational harm. Some sources believed Sarah's rumored legal threat wasn't about money, but about principle, a declaration that she would no longer shield him from the consequences of his actions. And at the heart of it all were her daughters. Beatrice and Eugenie had long struggled under the shadow of their father's scandals. Seeing yet another controversy drag their names into the headlines was, reportedly, the final straw. For Sarah, this was no longer just about public perception. It was about protecting her family's dignity. As word of her intentions spread, Buckingham Palace grew tense. Officials had worked tirelessly to minimize attention on Andrew, but a court battle, especially one led by Sarah, threatened to dismantle that fragile calm. Whether it was a genuine legal step or a calculated warning, one thing became clear. Sarah Ferguson was done being silent. The woman once dubbed Fergie the Forgiving now seemed ready to become Fergie the Fearless. But to understand how everything unraveled, we need to return to where it all began, long before the scandals and the silence. Stay tuned to find out. From royal love to Cold War. Long before leaked emails and royal scandals, Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson were the picture of a modern fairy tale. Childhood acquaintances turned sweethearts. They were reintroduced by Princess Diana, sparking a whirlwind romance that captivated Britain. In 1986, the world watched as the dashing Duke of York married the vibrant, flame-haired Sarah in a grand royal ceremony. With her humor and warmth, Fergie brought life and laughter into the often rigid Windsor household. For a while, they were the monarchy's golden couple, modern, lively, and deeply in love. But behind palace walls, the fairy tale soon cracked. Andrew's naval career took him away for long stretches, leaving Sarah alone under the glare of the royal spotlight. Her openness and playfulness delighted the public, but unsettled the establishment. Her exuberance was seen as undignified, her honesty as reckless. Isolation set in, and the distance between them grew wider with each deployment. By the early 1990s, the tension was impossible to hide. The tabloids, hungry for scandal, followed Sarah's every move. In 1992, her world imploded when photographers captured intimate images of her with American financier John Bryan. The photos of Bryan kissing her toes while she sunbathed in France became an international sensation and a royal disaster. Overnight, Sarah was branded a disgrace. The palace distanced itself, and her marriage collapsed under the weight of humiliation. Their separation that year led to a formal divorce in 1996, yet their bond never truly ended. Unusually for royal exes, Sarah and Andrew maintained an enduring connection. They continued to share a home at Royal Lodge, raised their daughters together, and often appeared side by side at family events. Their closeness fueled endless speculation about reconciliation, and Sarah remained one of Andrew's most vocal defenders, insisting they were the best of friends. But even friendship has limits. Those close to Sarah say she grew tired of standing by Andrew while he offered little in return. Each new controversy, financial dealings, public scrutiny, and his entanglement with Jeffrey Epstein pulled her name back into the mud she had spent years escaping. Behind her loyal facade, resentment simmered. Friends described Sarah as passionate and loyal, but unwilling to be taken for granted. The resurfacing of the 2011 email linking Andrew to attempts to gather information on Virginia Giuffre may have reignited those buried emotions. Not just anger at his actions, but frustration over years of shared fallout. What began as a love story has since hardened into a cold, uneasy truce, a relationship bound by shared history, but fractured by silence. Beneath the surface of civility lies years of suppressed emotion. And if the rumors of Sarah's legal strike are true, that long-simmering tension between them may finally be breaking into open conflict. The Epstein shadows return. The story of Jeffrey Epstein has haunted the royal family for years, but for Prince Andrew it was never just a passing controversy. It became the single most defining shadow of his public life. His friendship with Epstein, once described as ill-judged but not illegal, spiraled into a global scandal that no amount of royal diplomacy could contain. And now, with the resurfacing of the 2011 email, allegedly linking him to attempts to obtain personal information about Virginia Giuffre, that dark chapter has returned to the spotlight, deeper, sharper, and far more personal. The Epstein connection wasn't new. Photographs of Andrew walking with the convicted sex offender in New York's Central Park in 2010 had already caused outrage, but the newly leaked correspondence appeared to confirm that Andrew's involvement with the disgraced financier and with Giuffre's case was more extensive than many had realized. The email reportedly contained details so specific it suggested a coordinated effort to undermine her credibility. Critics quickly called it a disturbing misuse of privilege, while supporters urged caution, claiming the message might have been taken out of context. Whatever the truth, the reaction was explosive. The Metropolitan Police announced they were actively reviewing the claims, while lawmakers demanded transparency over Andrew's past dealings. Campaigners even urged Parliament to revisit century-old rules shielding royals from scrutiny, arguing that no title should place anyone above accountability. Within days, old suspicions resurfaced, not just about Andrew's judgment, but about who else in his circle might have known or participated in his dealings with Epstein. That's when Sarah Ferguson's name reappeared in the narrative. The Mail on Sunday published excerpts of a separate email allegedly sent by Epstein to his lawyer in 2011, claiming that Sarah had been the first to celebrate my release. He even referenced visits from the Duchess and her daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, though Sarah has long denied any such encounters. Neither she nor her daughters have any recollection of visiting Epstein, one spokesperson insisted. Still, the speculation spread like wildfire, fusing truth and rumor into an inescapable cloud of scandal. For Sarah, who had spent years repairing her reputation after her own controversies, this resurgence was nothing short of devastating. The leaked details risked painting her as complicit, or at least too close to a man now synonymous with exploitation and abuse. For the public, it became harder to separate Andrew's personal choices from the people closest to him. Inside Buckingham Palace, the mood reportedly turned frantic. Senior aides feared that every new revelation about Epstein would reopen old wounds the monarchy had worked tirelessly to close. King Charles and Prince William, already distancing themselves from Andrew, were said to be furious. Every fresh headline about the Duke and Epstein chipped away at the family's moral authority. What makes this resurgence particularly haunting is its timing. Just as the monarchy sought to move forward under a new era of restraint and modernization, the Epstein shadows dragged it backward into secrets, scandals, and uncomfortable questions about power and privilege. As the leaked email spread online, stirring outrage and curiosity alike, one question echoed louder than ever. Had Andrew truly severed ties with Epstein's world? Or had the ghosts of that friendship never been laid to rest? So, what was Buckingham Palace's reaction? Let's have a look. The Buckingham fallout. When the email surfaced, Buckingham Palace went into quiet but unmistakable crisis mode. For years, the royal family had been trying to manage the fallout from Prince Andrew's association with Jeffrey Epstein. But this new leak threatened to undo every bit of damage control that had been painstakingly built. Behind the polished walls of the palace, senior courtiers were said to be in a state of contained panic. The order was simple, yet desperate: contain, control, and bury the story before it became another international embarrassment. King Charles reportedly held a series of tense discussions with his advisors and with Prince William, who has long been among the most vocal in demanding accountability within the royal ranks. According to insiders, William was adamant. His uncle's actions had already tainted the monarchy once, and this new scandal could ignite a fresh wave of public anger. It wasn't just about the family's image anymore. It was about trust. The monarchy was still recovering from the loss of Queen Elizabeth II, navigating a modern world increasingly skeptical of inherited privilege. Another scandal could strike at the heart of that fragile public faith. For Charles, the decision was as painful as it was necessary. He reportedly told Andrew that stepping back from royal duties was no longer optional, it was permanent. Soon after, the announcement came that Prince Andrew would relinquish the use of his Duke of York title, along with all military honors and royal patronages. The once proud Knight of the Garter, a title steeped in centuries of chivalric prestige, was stripped from him. Even his Royal Highness style, once his birthright, was quietly placed in abeyance. It was, as one royal observer put it, a symbolic exile dressed in polite language. But inside royal circles, few believed this was purely Charles's doing. Multiple reports suggested that both the government and the Prince of Wales had pushed the king to act swiftly, warning that if the monarchy did not clean its own house, Parliament might be forced to intervene. Some even speculated that behind-the-scenes discussions about formally stripping Andrew of his dukedom had already begun, a move that would require an act of Parliament. Buckingham Palace, however, publicly maintained its silence. No official statement was issued beyond the initial announcement of Andrew's retreat from public life. Every media inquiry was met with the same refrain: "Chen no skamaptain, comments attention." Insiders described the mood as grim but resolute. The objective was clear: starve the scandal of oxygen, protect the institution, and hope the story faded. Yet the problem with royal secrets is that they rarely stay buried. With journalists uncovering new threads, lawmakers demanding transparency, and now Sarah Ferguson reportedly seeking legal recourse, the palace's silence felt less like control and more like fear. King Charles might have believed he was drawing a line under the scandal, but from the outside, it looked more like a family bracing for the next revelation. And just when it seemed the palace might contain the storm, pressure was mounting from Westminster. Could lawmakers finally force the monarchy's hand? Stay tuned to find out. Parliament versus the palace. As the scandal surrounding Prince Andrew reignited, the ripples of outrage spread far beyond Buckingham Palace, straight into the corridors of Westminster. For years, Parliament had largely avoided wading into royal controversies, constrained by centuries-old rules that forbade MPs and peers from questioning the private affairs of the monarchy. But the leaked email, the renewed media frenzy, and the growing perception that Andrew had evaded true accountability proved to be a breaking point. The British public was angry, the press relentless, and now lawmakers were beginning to speak in tones rarely heard about a royal, that no one, not even a prince, should be beyond scrutiny. It started quietly, with Labour MP Rachel Maskell from York Central reviving her earlier proposal, a removal of titles bill, first introduced in 2022 after the initial wave of Epstein allegations. The bill aimed to create a legal pathway allowing Parliament or the monarch to strip royal titles in cases of public disgrace or misconduct. Maskell's renewed push came with sharper language this time, reflecting public fatigue with half measures. "Every time this resurfaces," she said, "it re-traumatizes victims and erodes public trust. The mechanisms must exist to remove titles when conduct no longer reflects the honor they represent." Other voices quickly joined the chorus. Ed Miliband called the leaked correspondence deeply concerning, emphasizing that any hint of royal interference with police matters demanded serious review. Nadia Whittome of Nottingham East went further, saying the monarchy should not hide behind voluntary renunciations and mealy-mouthed statements. Even members of the House of Lords, usually cautious in royal matters, began to push for clarity on what the palace knew and when. Labour peer George Folks publicly questioned why Parliament remained bound by archaic restrictions, preventing them from formally investigating royal behaviour. In light of recent events, he argued, the rules must be reviewed. Accountability must extend to all. It wasn't just about Andrew's titles anymore. It had become a symbolic struggle over transparency itself. The royal family's exemption from freedom of information laws, the secrecy of royal wills, and the lack of independent oversight over their finances suddenly seemed like relics of another age. For some MPs, Andrew's scandal wasn't an isolated disgrace but evidence of a larger problem, an institution too insulated from modern standards of accountability. Amid the scandal, Sarah Ferguson's rumored legal move against Andrew took on new significance. What seemed personal became part of a broader reckoning, reflecting public frustration with privilege and silence. Her consultations with lawyers echoed Parliament's growing insistence on accountability. Buckingham Palace sought to contain the matter, but lawmakers pushed back. Some MPs suggested reopening investigations into Andrew's conduct as a former trade envoy, questioning whether he used his position for personal gain. Others called for a review of his continued residence at the Royal Lodge. Behind royal tradition, a historic confrontation was quietly unfolding, one that could reshape both public perception and royal protocol. The more the palace stayed silent, the louder Westminster became. For King Charles, it was an uncomfortable reminder that his promise of a modern monarchy carried real expectations, and Parliament was ready to hold the family to them. What began as a scandal was now testing the limits of royal privilege, with Sarah Ferguson emerging as an unexpected catalyst for accountability. But as the political pressure built, all eyes quietly turned back to the Royal Lodge, the former sanctuary of Andrew and Fergie. What truths remain hidden behind those walls? Keep watching to uncover them. Royal Lodge, the fortress of silence. Behind the tall wrought iron gates of Windsor Great Park lies the Royal Lodge, a sprawling ivy-wrapped estate that once symbolized royal privilege and peace. But in recent months, that peace has reportedly fractured. Once a shared sanctuary for Prince Andrew and Sarah Ferguson, the 30-room mansion has become something closer to a gilded prison, a fortress of silence where resentment, fear, and old loyalties now collide. Prince Andrew has lived there since the early 2000s under an ironclad lease agreement that even the monarchy itself struggles to challenge. When the Queen Mother passed away, he took on the property with a promise of restoration, reportedly investing millions into repairs in exchange for a symbolic rent. For years, it was his safe haven, a private world far removed from public scrutiny. After his fall from grace, it became a retreat in every sense of the word. But now, the same estate that once protected him is rumored to be the center of a growing storm. Sarah Ferguson's continued presence at Royal Lodge had always fascinated the public. Even after their divorce in 1996, she remained unusually close to Andrew, living under the same roof, raising their daughters, and describing their bond as an unbreakable friendship. But according to sources close to the Duchess, the atmosphere has shifted dramatically since the leaked email reignited controversy. The warmth that once defined their relationship has reportedly cooled into awkward civility. Friends say Sarah's frustration has reached a breaking point. She has built a career as an author, charity advocate, and public figure, carefully distancing herself from her past mistakes. Yet, every fresh revelation about Andrew threatens to pull her back into the same old narrative. The Duchess, who once defended her ex-husband, now reportedly spends her days weighing her legal options, increasingly determined to draw a line between her life and his legacy. She feels trapped. One insider was quoted as saying, "Royal Lodge was supposed to be a refuge, but now it feels like a cage." Meanwhile, Andrew's isolation has deepened. Stripped of titles, royal duties, and much of his public dignity, he spends most of his time out of sight. Once surrounded by aides and guests, the Duke now lives in a quieter, more subdued routine. Walks on the grounds, limited visitors, and a lingering sense of defiance. Insiders claim he's reluctant to leave the lodge, knowing it remains one of the few privileges left untouched by scandal. Caught in the middle are their daughters, Princess Beatrice and Princess Eugenie, loyal to both parents, yet visibly weary of the constant scrutiny. They visit, they mediate, but they can't mend the widening rift between their mother's resolve and their father's denial. If Sarah's rumored lawsuit proceeds, it could shatter the uneasy peace of Royal Lodge once and for all. Legal battles have a way of unearthing secrets, and for a man who's built his last refuge on silence, exposure could mean eviction, both literally and emotionally. The walls of Royal Lodge have kept many whispers hidden, but if Sarah truly decides to speak through the courts, even its centuries-old stone may not be enough to contain the truth. The tension inside Royal Lodge was only the beginning. What happened next would spill far beyond its walls. Stay tuned to see how the story unfolds. The leak that changed everything. What began as quiet tension inside Royal Lodge soon erupted into public chaos. As whispers about Sarah Ferguson's mounting frustration leaked into the press, investigative journalists and online sleuths began connecting the dots that the palace desperately wanted erased. What they found sent shockwaves across both the media and royal circles. It started with a single email, but the trail didn't end there. Within weeks, digital archives and old Epstein case files began resurfacing across online forums. Activists, journalists, and independent researchers pieced together timelines that linked Andrew's 2011 message to a series of other private communications, some involving royal aides, others referencing meetings that had never been publicly acknowledged. The deeper they dug, the more questions arose about who else might have known and who might have helped. Some of the documents hinted at overlapping dates, moments when Sarah and their daughters were reportedly in New York, coinciding with visits linked to Epstein's inner circle. While none of the files proved direct wrongdoing, the coincidences were damning enough to raise eyebrows. And for Sarah, that speculation was intolerable. Sources close to the Duchess claimed she had stumbled across information suggesting her family's names appeared more often in these digital trails than she ever realized. If that was true, it would explain her sudden fury and determination to take legal action. What may have begun as Andrew's private crisis had, in her eyes, become a family betrayal, one that could drag Beatrice and Eugenie into a scandal they had spent years trying to outrun. As new reports spread and screenshots went viral, the walls of Royal Lodge, once the quiet buffer between Sarah and the world, seemed to dissolve overnight. The secret was out, and the fallout was only beginning. The palace in panic mode. By the time the leaked emails dominated headlines, Buckingham Palace was in full-blown crisis mode. Every corridor buzzed with urgency as King Charles's advisors scrambled to assess the damage and, more importantly, prevent further leaks. The palace press office, usually so composed, was reportedly overwhelmed by late-night strategy meetings and frantic phone calls. The priority was clear: protect the monarchy's image at any cost. Prince William, ever the pragmatist, was said to be growing impatient. According to insiders, he pushed for total transparency, or as close to it as royal protocol would allow. "No more quiet cover-ups," he reportedly told senior staff, warning that silence would only make things worse. His position reflected a generational divide within the family. The old guard favored discretion, while the younger royals understood the modern demand for accountability. For King Charles, the situation posed a deeper dilemma. Public sympathy was waning, and the idea of yet another royal scandal was exhausting. With Sarah Ferguson allegedly preparing for legal action and the media circling for more leaks, the monarch faced an impossible choice: defend his brother or let him fall completely. Meanwhile, Sarah's next move remained unpredictable. Would she file in court, forcing the palace into unprecedented scrutiny? Or would a quiet settlement be arranged behind the scenes? For now, no one knew. But one thing was certain: the walls of royal secrecy were cracking, and whatever came next could shake the monarchy to its core. So, what happens if Sarah truly takes Andrew to court? Would royal immunity finally crack? We'd like to hear your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more royal revelations.